Welcome to Solo Sailing with Trevor White, and tonight I'm going to discuss a sail I did from Tonga, Nuka'olofa in Tonga, out past the newest island in the Pacific, which is Hunga Tonga, which was formed by volcanic eruptions, or at least modified. And then we sailed up to the Middle Kingdom and to an island called Pangai, which is the centre of administration in the Middle Kingdom, on Lifuka. We visited a couple of islands, which I'll go through. So we spent some time in Nuka'olofa. We visited several places. We reprovisioned. We got fuel, gas. Spent some time just looking around, doing what you do, going out for dinner and having a few drinks, seeing the sights. And then we decided it was time to move on, get out of the city and go and see some of the traditional peoples of Tonga and enjoy more of what we thought Tonga was going to be, and was, to be honest. It was, I found it really fascinating. I think Tonga is a beautiful place. It's a great place to visit, and much of it isn't visited by yachts. You get a lot of yachts visiting Tonga, but they generally just visit the main centres to the north and south, and they don't travel through the middle, which I think is their loss. And it's probably the middle Hapaya group, which is probably some of the most beautiful parts of Tonga. And it's inundated with whales in season, some beautiful water, great swimming, great diving, fantastic corals, and wonderful warm people, which is why you go to the Pacific and visit these countries, is to experience the cultures, the people, and check out the places as well. And Tonga is a classic Pacific island nation, small atolls with village groups living there, quite friendly people generally, and they're living very much a subsistence lifestyle with a few modern conveniences. The kids are often off at boarding school in the bigger cities, getting an education, and the people are making ends meet the best they can. I think Tonga is well worth a visit, and I think far too many yachts just go to the main business centres, do their customs clearances, have a look around, do a couple of tours, maybe swim with whales, and then they push on to Fiji, and they miss what is probably the essence of Tonga. So we decided to sail from south to north. We'd arrived in Nuka'olofa in the south. One of the items on my bucket list was seeing Hunga Tonga. It's the newest island in the world. So we set sail early in the morning, had Esther, who'd come from New Zealand with us, Justin and Pierre, the French couple. So we all had our standard crew. We left Nuka'olofa probably at 6 o'clock in the morning, dropped our lines. It was a beautiful day, flat seas, just a gentle 10-knot breeze from the east. The sun was rising, like we had everything in our favour. So couldn't have asked for a better day. And all we had to do was navigate out of Nuka'olofa waters on our way to Hunga Tonga. So it wasn't terribly difficult at all. It was just followed the main shipping routes. There was a channel to the northwest and a passage. We went through that passage, passing several fishing boats and divers, mainly out there fishing. I think probably fishing for the local markets. And fish life should have been good out there. There was a lot of reef, a lot of water pushing around, so I would think it would have been very healthy. And for us, it was about a 30-mile, 4 or 5 hour trip to Hunga Tonga. So we set sail. We were at full sail on a genoa, and we just settled into an easy cruisy sail to Hunga Tonga. It was blowing probably 10 knots the whole way. It was a very, very cruisy day. Everybody was just chilling out, and I think after about 4 hours and a bit, we got out to Hunga Tonga. We didn't go too close. I wasn't 100% sure of the structure. It rises from about 2,000 metres, so it's awesome when you think of you're looking at this top of a mountain. It's only sticking out probably 100 or 200 feet, and we're sailing past it. So we probably gave it a good a mile's berth, I guess, and got some photographs. I'm not sure my crew were as impressed as I was. I mean, I just wanted to see this thing and experience it. And then once we'd done that, we took a few photos. We set course for Hapai Group, and it was always going to be an overnight sail unless we went to one of the more, smaller atolls not far from Nuka'olofa, and I didn't think there was really much there for that, so I felt it was better to go further up, do an overnight passage, and take the advantage of seeing Hunga Tonga on that trip. So it was another 14, 16 hours to the middle of Tonga. So we just settled in for a nice routine again, hardened up on the wind. We're probably sailing now more of a northeasterly course. Again, the wind was still on our east, so it was a pretty good sail. We were making good speed. Everything was pretty easy. The wind stayed constant the whole time, so I couldn't ask for anything easier. And as an overnight passage, it was breezy. Like everybody sort of got into a routine coming up from New Zealand, so they just fell back into that routine, and it was enjoyable. It was just flat seas. I don't think anybody felt seasick at all. We didn't experience those big ocean swells. We had a little bit of a swell rolling, but it was really, really pleasant sailing. So we were going to an island called Hafia Island, and it's in the southern part of the Hapai Group. It's a natural harbour, small natural harbour. It's surrounded by other islands and reef. So I thought that looked like a really good anchorage from the charts. It looked reasonably well protected. It looked like a good place to put the pick down. If the winds did come from any direction, we were going to have some protection from the wind and the swells. And there's also a couple of old wrecks in that area. So I thought, we should be able to maybe dive on a couple of wrecks or swim on a couple of wrecks. So that was the plan, and we arrived at about 6 o'clock in the morning, which was roughly when we anticipated to get there. But it's interesting coming in, the swells are just bashing against these, small atolls, and it's from a long way out, you get these really deep, wave actions, the noise, just booming. Couldn't quite work out what it was initially, but it was the waves just punching against the coral, reefs, and just, really creating some, intense wave action, and it makes you, smartens you up. You check your nav more than once, and like the navigating there it's generally okay, but I wouldn't go in there at night. I wouldn't try and navigate through there at night, not unless I'd been in there before. And I even found coming in that morning that some of the reefs, they weren't super accurate. I would have said a couple 100 metres best case. So you're still using eyeball navigation, going a little wide, taking a nice safe course, and we just navigated into the bay. And I was operating off Mr. John's notes. There's a chap who sailed through there a few years ago. He wrote a heap of notes on Tonga, so I had his notes, and it was one of the anchorages he recommended. So that was my recommendation, and using his drawings in addition to our modern charts. Got in there, really no problems at all. It was easy to navigate in, even though it was early in the morning, and it probably wasn't ideal for picking reefs, but we just slowed down, picked our way in, dropped the sails. Tintin's reasonably agile, so if you need to drop a bit of speed, we can do that quickly. And it is aluminium, so we're a little bit more resilient than some softer skin boats. But we got in. We found the harbour, and our friends were already in there. There was a yacht we'd been sailing with previously, Little Fish. They were anchored in the bay. We'd found a spot probably a couple 100 metres from them. Probably on where were we, on the north side of the jetty. We just had to drive around a bit, looking for sand holes. A bit of coral, a few bommies. So it took a little while just to find a spot that I was super comfortable with. Eventually got a pick down on probably the second try that wasn't going to be impacted by coral heads. And once we'd done that, just swam the anchor. Everything was good, and we just did some swimming. It was really pleasant, good viz, lovely spot. And I just settled down to making more water. So I got the water maker going, and Justine and Pierre, they grabbed the dinghy and went ashore, checking out the village. Esther may have gone ashore as well at that stage. And yeah, we just did a bit of a morning routine really, and before that we had breakfast as well. Of course, it was a pleasant place to have breakfast. It was just a beautiful little atoll, or island rather, and just very chilled vibe. And I enjoyed just getting in there and relaxing and getting away from the big city, as far as a big city as Nuka'olofa is. Hustle and bustle and fishing boats, and yeah, there's just 2 yachts anchored in a reasonably large bay, protected by really good reef and islands, and it was a great spot just to spend the day. So later in the day, Esther and I think Justin and Pierre were still walking around the island, so we went over, visited Little Fish, caught up with those guys, see what they're up to, and they've just been doing a bit of diving around the island, which is cool. And we proceeded to just do a bit of snorkeling, I think, because the diving wasn't that great. There'd been some damage from the hurricane, or earthquake and tsunami. So that had a tsunami from the explosion in 2022, and that had caused considerable damage to the reef, and they were basically a direct line of sight from the volcano. So a lot of those places did cop a bit of damage. The other side of the island was less damaged, but if you're in a direct hit, you are going to cop a fair amount of surge damage. So that was pretty much our day, and I think we spent the next day, maybe a couple of days there. And Justin and Pierre, they were talking to the locals, and they also grabbed some water as well. Like, we were trying to just fill up our tanks, and caught up with one of the guys who was a fisherman on town, and we invited him back to the boat one of the nights, and we had a nice cook up on the boat. It was good just to chat to a local guy and get a feel for what was going on in the area. We got invited to a dinner, but we had a routine to follow. I was still very much on a timeline, moving through Tonga, which I don't like being on a timeline, but we needed to keep moving along. And overall, I thought it was a great spot to visit. I would highly recommend it. The people were super friendly. I would probably take some additional supplies, school supplies, threads, fishing lines, even a spare outboard. I mean, the guy was trying to get my small outboard off me, but I was still using that very much on a regular basis, so I didn't want to part with it. But I could see why he wanted it. But you can only give so much, and but I think all cruises can certainly help the people out. Just to analyse what they need, and then bring them things that contribute to their quality of life. And everybody there was very, very friendly. So from there, I think we spent 3 days there, and then we moved up to the Island of Lifuka, and we were in the southern part of that island. So as we progressed up there, again, it was another beautiful day. Like, I don't even think we put the main up. It was it might have been 3 or 4 knots. We were just motor sailing along, a little bit of Genoa out, and I started seeing whales. I mean, I used to live in Hervey Bay in Queensland for a while, so I was really familiar with whales. I'd seen thousands of them and helped out in a mate's whale boat. So I was pretty good at spotting whales and seeing what they were. And I'm sort of telling my crew, we've got some whales over here, and they're just telling me that I'm pulling the piss. But sure enough, a couple of miles further down, we had whales, and we had a really active pod just in this massive big bay en route to Pangai. So we just motored around following those whales and interacting with them. They were really curious. They were quite happy to swim around us and spend time with us. We had to just move around them a little bit, but they were quite interested, which is not always the case with whales. Often whales, they're going somewhere, and they might swim to have a look at you, but they're not hanging around. These couple of whales were interested, and then they just lost interest and moved on. And once whales do that, it's very hard to keep up with them. They're probably doing anywhere between 6 and 10 knots, and they can dive for extended periods of time. And it was quite deep. It was probably 50 metres of water in that bay. So we quickly lost those whales and just got back on our course. And it wouldn't have been, I don't know, 15 minutes later, we had another small pod. And these ones were just come in, have a bit of a look, and they were moving on. They were hauling us, they were going somewhere, we weren't that interesting, so they just kept moving. And that was probably the general feel I got from a lot of the whales we saw. They were they were progressing to another part of the island, and but they were happy to come and have a look. I found that they were more interested in checking out the boat than I'd seen in Hervey Bay. Over there, the whales sort of do their own thing, and you go to them. Here, the whales are coming to us, and they're moving on. But that's okay. I still found it, always find it fascinating, spending time with whales. My crew was super excited. They wanted to see whales. They wanted to swim with whales. They wanted to dance with. They wanted to do anything with whales they could do. So, at one stage I thought one of my crew was going to jump overboard and swim with whales, which I sort of cautioned him against, because when we're motoring, we don't do that. And, the whales need to be comfortable with us before we would enter the water, which isn't going to happen. It doesn't normally happen on a yacht either. You might get a few days where whales are super interested in you, and you can slip into the water quietly and spend a little bit of time just interacting with them. But generally, they're going somewhere, and they're generally not that interested in you. But when they do find you fascinating, they'll can hang around for an hour or more. And I've seen it's times in Hervey Bay where we've had 20 or 30 whales, cutting laps around the boat, and almost like big dolphins. It was super fascinating to see. But in in Tonga, I got probably pods of maximum about 5, but generally in 1s and 2s. So that was still really exciting to see it. They're beautiful creatures. So we just kept moving to on our course and interacting with little pods as we found them. And then we once we got up to the passage, there's a small passage just to the south of Hunga Island. So we crossed that passage, and then we just found another little bay. And in that bay, right on the south, there's a number of resorts in there. So very much Western resorts, one's owned by Americans, the other one's owned by somebody, I'm not sure. But it's a beautiful bay. So we anchored in there, and again we spent another couple of days in there. We went diving in that area, and just having a really good relaxed look around. Guys went for a walk on the beach. We went over to a couple of the resorts, said g'day, and just seeing what everybody was up to. And it was still early in the season for them. They were only just starting to prepare the resort to open. Everybody's still recovering from the recent volcano and the tsunami, and then COVID. So it's been a tough time for a lot of these guys. And the coral is a little bit knocked around, but the whales are there, and these guys are running whale tours. So they just run small pungas, fiberglass boats with 1 or 2 engines, so they're quite quick, and that enables them to interact with the whales easier. They can put a bunch of snorkelers on board. They can race up past the whales, drop the people in the water. The whales then swim through you or past you, and if they're interested, they'll hang around. But if not, you're just back in the boat, and then you can leapfrog in front of them, similar to what you would do with whale sharks, which is the common practice they do with whale sharks. So it was a really nice spot just to hang out. The weather was fantastic. We had an easterly, just getting light easterlies, and our bay was perfectly protected. We had really good holdings, sand bottom. You couldn't have asked for a more beautiful bay to spend a few days. So we spent a few days there, just chilling, going for walks, snorkeling, diving, and then we decided it was time to start moving to the north of the island, and had to clear customs in the Middle Kingdom in Pangai, and before we could go to the north. So late in the afternoon, we motored up to Pangai, dropped anchor outside of the harbour. And I found anchoring there was a little bit challenging. And, we dragged a couple of times. It was quite a hard bottom. We eventually got the anchor in. There's a few coral heads and bommies in there. There's a few boats, so other boats have got the better position, so I had to anchor a little bit further out. It was a little bit deeper. But, we eventually got a really good anchor down, and you need one because if it blows up, there's coral everywhere. The island is surrounded by coral, so you can't afford to drag in these locations. And once we got anchor set, we went into town, into Punga, into the wharf, tied up in the wharf, and it has got to be the slipperiest wharf I've ever been on. It's particularly the southern end of the wharf. Some form of viscous film on the metal structures. I don't think I've ever walked on anything so slippery in my life. It was ridiculous. We tied the dinghy up and almost needed to go on hands and knees to get across this metal deck. It was ridiculously slippery, but we did manage to get across. Went into town, and there's a service station just to the south of the wharf. They had diesel and ULP. Found the customs building. It was a few hundred metres to the south on the main road, just off near a communications tower, and there was a small convenience shop. So what I tend to do is I tend to stop and refuel regularly at small places because I never know where there's going to be fuel ahead, and I also buy provisions as I'm going, and so I'm also, in my mind, I'm supporting the economy. I'm not buying everything they've got. I'm just buying small quantities. I'm up supplementing my rations on the boat. I'll tend to buy frozen fish, frozen meat. If they've got gardens, I'll buy fresh veggies, get the veggies topped up, the fruit topped up, and fuel. And these guys had plenty of fuel, so I think we only filled up maybe 40 litres or 60 litres of fuel. So that was the job for the next morning. But we went back in, and crew were on fuel duty. I was on customs duty, and one of the crew, I think it might have been Esther, was tasked with finding a supermarket and seeing what they had and how it would complement our food. And we're only 2 days from, not in 2 days, 24 hours from the next port, so we didn't need a lot, but you never know what you're going to find. Like, you might get there's been a storm, or there's been a problem with refrigeration, or there's been an influx of boaties who have bought everything. So it's good to have enough rations to last a week or two, and ideally have some fresh. And if we're lucky, we'll also catch fish. And so we had the lures out the whole time. We didn't catch any fish, sadly, but we certainly tried. Better luck next time. But we grabbed fuel, we cleared customs, which was pretty painless. They were very helpful, friendly people. The King was coming up for his visit in a couple of days. They wanted us to hang around, but again, we still had our timeline to meet. So we decided to clear customs and then move on. So we'd finished clearing customs, refuelling, back on the boat, probably by about lunchtime. And I wanted to be out of the passage by, before it got dark. The passage to the north, again, it's an okay shipping channel, but it's not something I would do at night. I wouldn't be comfortable travelling through that shipping channel at night. There's a lot of reef either sides. The lights aren't always so fantastic. There were some channel markers on near Punga, and they were working. I'm not sure all of them were working though, so it seemed a little bit odd at times, and it could have been probably confusing if you didn't have solid GPS and a chart plotter and you're just relying on charts. I would have found that a little confusing. So you still have to be very aware, and I think caution is the best form of defence in these regions. Is if you're coming in at night, you need to be incredibly careful, but ideally come in during the daylight hours. That way you're less chance of damaging your boat or anything else. So we left. We'd cleared all the reefs by about 4 o'clock. We got back out into the open ocean, and we were planning on being to the north, Nafate, in at about 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock the next morning. So again, we had a pretty cruisy afternoon. We just set the spinnakers. We had both spinnakers up with light conditions. So got both my spinnakers up, and boat was just cruising along. We were probably averaging about 5 or 6 knots. It was really pleasant. Like, you're getting everybody involved in sails and playing around and tweaking things and spinnaker poles. So everybody's getting a lot of hands-on playing with sail combinations, and then we had a wind shift come through. We had probably 10 or 15 knots come burling through. So that was unexpected, and then we ended up getting a twist in the sock. So had to drop the spinnaker the old way, and that became a bit confusing. We had, different languages, and instructions don't always get translated perfectly. So it was exciting for a few minutes while we got the spinnaker in, but eventually dragged it in under the mast, old school, and down through a hatch. Everybody remained on deck, but Esther did get a bit of a rope burn, so we had to treat that. I think we just was on one reef, the mizzen and the John end, so we still had a pretty easy cruisy sail up the outside of the reefs in deep water, and we got off the Vavau group probably at about, I think, 6 o'clock in the morning, or maybe even earlier. It was before first light, so I was just out there hove to, waiting for first light to come. I'm normally the last watch, probably the last 4 hours. I tend to sit on there, and that gives me a chance to check on my nav, make sure I'm comfortable with our approach. If I need to change our approaches, I'll do that. If I see that I can get in through a different passage, then I can make those decisions. But we ended up going to the most western passage. A couple of the southern passages were working a bit too hard. So the most western passage into the Vavau group was what I selected, and we got in there, before 6 o'clock, just on first light, and we waited till we got good light, and then we proceeded in. So that was our trip. It was mostly uneventful. It was I view it as the highlight of my Tonga, or time in Tonga, and I would highly recommend it to anybody if you're coming across from Tahiti or the Cooks, or anywhere else. I would come into Nuka'olofa, and then I would spend a few weeks moving north through Tonga, and exit in the Vavau group across to Sabu in Fiji, and then you can work your way down to Vuda. That would be my thoughts. It's not a bad run. Winds tend to favour that as well. You need to be a bit careful of the corals. Like I went high around to the north of a lot of the coral on the west of Fiji, in the east of Fiji, and that worked out well for me. There's at least one catamaran was lost hitting reef at night, sadly. But that is sailing in the Pacific. It maintains a level of risk that you need to manage. But Tonga, loved it. It was a great place. I would go back. I thought the people were fantastic. I would probably spend next time at least a month in the Apaya group. I would definitely spend a lot longer there than I would in the other two locations. It's also dramatically different. The south of Tonga and the north of Tonga are vastly different terrains and topography. The water's also a bit different. It's just fascinating how it changes in such a small distance. So highly recommend it. People are lovely, and it was pretty cruisy. And I think it's a little bit weather dependent. If you get really good weather, you'll have a great time. If you get crappy weather, some of the places get a little exposed, but you've just got to do a chart recon and then just map out those places, and just download as many resources as you can. There's some great resources for Tonga. You just need to go down, find the latest ones, and even some of the older ones, and just cross-reference everything, get the latest charts. I think my Garmin stuff was reasonably accurate. My Navionics, essentially made by the same company, on my phone was okay. I don't think it was super accurate, but it was probably more detail in it in a lot of places, and that's what I tend to find. I find the Navionics is probably getting used a lot more, so it's getting updated more regularly. But I'm not sure how they manage the whole updating of their charting software. But generally, a lot of places I find the Navionics good. Like they're really good around ports and harbours, and places where there's a lot of traffic. Navionics is fantastic. It really drops off in the open ocean, the isolated islands, reefs. It's less accurate. And that's where I find it. Paper charts really come into their own as well. Like often, paper charts may still be wrong, but they're drawn correctly, and the positions might not be perfect, but they're generally drawn perfectly. Whereas I find some of the electronic charts, I'm not sure they're always, a perfect representation of what's there and the ions. Whereas paper charts, you don't have that same level of detail normally, so you just have a different approach. Whereas I think people become over-reliant on electronic charts, and you've got to caution yourself, and you've really got to dig into the smaller scales to keep yourself and your boat and your crew safe. Too many people, become reliant on electronic charts, and they hit shit. And this is where having paper charts, if you can, as a backup, have them on your chart table. Just give them a glance. Just check the little islands as you're moving between countries or islands or land masses. And sometimes there's just a reef which isn't represented very well in your electronic charts. It's something I found more and more. The more I'm cruising in isolated areas, I really like having paper charts as a backup. I don't have all the small charts, the little chartlets and harbours. I tend to rely on avionics for that. But the ocean charts, I think paper charts give you more confidence. But that's me. Thank you for joining me. Safe sailing, and maybe I'll see you in Tonga one day.